I tell them pretty much it's an economic decision. It's not a, who's going to better exploit my copyrights. Now that's a little bit different down here than it is in LA. In LA and New York, most artists who write their own material, it's material that only that artist can do or will do. So it's not like I'm going to make a deal with a publisher for my songs and they're going to go out and get other artists to cover my songs, which means, record them for them. That just doesn't happen in the rock pop world. I mean, everyone pretty much does their own material. So why would you do a publishing? You do it because you need money. You can hire people for very low fees to just collect the income, do the administrative functions. So that's really not an argument. But you really do publishing, sell your publishing for money, support, so you have income when you're starting off your career. Now, in Nashville, it's a little bit different in that most of the artists do outside songs. If you look at the list of every hit on the charts, it's unusual, quite honestly, to see artists who do their own material. Now, it's gotten less so in the last 5, 6, 7 years, but there's still a huge number of songs that are recorded, easily the majority of them, that are written by other people. So here, if you give up your publishing as a new artist and you actually write songs that someone else could record, there is a chance that publisher may go out and get you a cover and make more money for you. So it's not strictly an economic decision down here, but it's still predominantly one. So that you do a publishing deal when you're young because you need the money. It's not so much because you think this publisher is going to do all these great things with your songs. There's always the exception to the rule. Every once in a while, there's a publisher out there that really is a great publisher that really maybe will help that writer write his songs, et cetera, et cetera. And that's unusual, but most of the time it's an economic decision. You want to get to a publisher that actually can help get you covers. I mean, that's the key. And if you talk to songwriters down here, most of them will tell you, at least they always tell me, that they get most of their own covers. That they, by hanging out with their friends and or another songwriter who happens to know an artist who's recording, it's always like, through these various sources. It's rarely where the publisher went into this producer's office, said that you got to record this song for Alan Jackson's next record. We think it's a hit. I mean, that does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. And if you talk to publishers, it happens every day. But every time I talk to writers about it, the writers at least that I work with, I always say, did your publisher get you a lot of covers? Have they really generated a lot of income for you? And most often not, they say, not really. I get most of them. I've done it myself. I brought it in. The guy just really collects my money, pays me a nice, weekly salary or biweekly, whatever it is. And that's why I have a publisher. It's interesting. Now, I think that's probably more true with the bigger writers. If you, in this town, hit a certain level where you're known, then you really probably don't need a publisher because all the labels are coming to you every time they have a new artist. I mean, they just pound you for the hits. So you probably can do your own publishing once you're known and not have to, rely on one of the majors for a publishing deal. But if you're a young writer, I think that A, the money you need, B, they probably do get some covers here and there, and C, they give you the facilities, they help put you together with other writers. To me, that's probably one of their biggest sources of assistance, is if they can if you're a brand new writer and maybe you've had one minor hit or something and you get a deal with one of the majors, they can put you in all these various writing relationships, just because they have other big writers and they say, look, why don't we set you up as so-and-so, why don't we set you up as so-and-so? That could be a really productive thing for your career.
On the publishing side, when you make a deal with a publisher, there's going to be a certain split. You may co-own the copyright. The fairly typical deal these days is you co-own the copyright. You, the writer, get 50% of the money as the writer, and the other 50 is divided between the writer and the publisher, what we call a co-publishing deal. So you own the copyright 50-50, but you're a co-publisher, so the net effect is, depending on the other language of the contract, you, the writer, are getting 75% of the money, and the publisher's getting 25% of the money. An administration deal may not involve any ownership of the copyright. The administrator may take anywhere from 20 to 10 to even 5% and just gets a commission for collecting your money. but you know where you stand on it.
Whenever we're using music for some kind of business establishment or anything other than the home, pretty much is the rule. It then falls under, it's a particular right of copyright, the performance right, one of the 6 rights of copyright. And once that's triggered, there has to be permission, there has to be payment made. So if you're using, let's say, in a large department store or in a dentist's office or in a school, for not for face-to-face teaching purposes, but for anything other. If you have concerts in a school and anything like that, I mean, there are licenses to be had, so they're negotiated, and then money is paid, and we collect it, and then we distribute it to writers and publishers. So the answer is yes. In the main, anytime you're seeing music performed, you need to acquire a license and normally make a payment. Now, the license can be directly from the person who owns that music, or it can be through the performance rights organizations, which are ASCAP, BMI, and then there's a smaller organization, CSAC. And you have to look at the composition being performed, because that triggers whoever's collecting the money and whoever negotiates the fee. Because if a writer is a member of ASCAP, then ASCAP is licensing that writer's works. If the writer is a member of BMI, on the other hand, Broadcast Music Inc., then they would be going under the BMI license. So, but that's why most establishments, most users, at least have an ASCAP and BMI license. I mean, we're negotiating license fees with all these different users of music. Now, universities do use music, and there's a separate license. All these licenses are negotiated. Some are flat fee arrangements, some are based on percentage of advertising gross receipts, others based on number of seats you have at a club or price of admission to a club, type of music being performed, whether it's mechanical music or if it's live performances. There are all these different licenses which are negotiated. And the one for universities is on a, I don't recall what the exact number is, but it's on a per full-time student enrolled. It's a penny, it's a certain number of cents per full-time student enrolled. And then there's some separate licenses for concerts that are over a certain amount of, where the performers are paid over a certain amount of money and stuff. But I think the point is that there are all these different licenses for universities, for hotel change, for any type of venues where music is being used. And in the university one, some of the university dealings are exempt, obviously, under the copyright law. Face-to-face teaching, you can use music without making a payment or triggering or infringement suit or something like that. But once it goes beyond that, you really are talking about some kind of performance right involved in it. But as I said, we negotiate the fee, we collect the money, and then we pay writers and publishers. And this also, one thing that's real important to remember is that if you're a writer or a music publisher, because the money is split 50-50. If $50 goes to a publisher, $50 goes to the writer for that same performance. But there is a performing rights organization in every country of the world, all the main countries, obviously. I think there's over 85 PROs out there. And for American writers and for a lot of American publishers, but particularly for American writers, a lot of their money comes from outside the U.S., particularly if you're successful these days. If you're a film and TV writer, or if you're a major radio writer, you're getting performances throughout the world. So we have arrangements, they're called reciprocal agreements, with all the PROs of the world. PRS in England is the ASCAP of England, SOCAN in Canada, APRA in Australia, SACEM in France, GEMA in Germany, JASRAC in Japan. And so when our writers' works, our ASCAP writers' works are performed outside the U.S. in any of those countries, they're collecting as if they were members of their own society, and they're sending money to us, and then we distribute it to the writer here. So, and we're doing the same thing for, let's say, the Rolling Stones or the Beatles. They're licensed their stuff through ASCAP. We're collecting for their members of PRS, the English Society. So we collect for them here when they have radio or TV performances or live concert performances, whatever. And we send the money to England, PRS, the society there, and they distribute to their own members. So through these reciprocal agreements, they're covering uses anywhere, meaning if you have a French writer's stuff being performed at a university, it's covered under the university license. We collect it and we send the money to the French society. So, and vice versa for French universities. It's a complex field because if you go through the payment formulas for both ASCAP and BMI, I mean, there are different types of performances. Let's say on television, you've got underscore, you've got theme songs, you've got visual vocals, you've got jingles, promos. copyright arrangements of public domain works. All those things are paid differently. They have different payments attached to them. Both organizations have different payment rules for television, for radio, for every type of medium. Then the specific genres that are performed in that medium, I mean, that really doesn't, it's really the medium that determines how things are paid. So you really have to go through both organizations' payment rules. You've got to know how the rules are changed, so you don't go into one place and all of a sudden a month later they change the rules on you and you're stuck for 2 years. So you've got to understand how they pay and also how they change their payment rules. And it all, the starting point is the amount of money that comes into the organization and the philosophy of how they split that money up. The foreign area is a very big area. I mean, we collect, I think, well over $200 million just for foreign performances of writers' works. And so you need good relationships as a performing rights organization here in the United States with the foreign societies. So if your own organization doesn't have great relationships, or they don't go in and audit the foreign societies, they're called technical business. They're friendly audits, actually, in quotes. But just to make sure you're getting your fair share of monies. So there are a lot of things that you have to know about your own organization here in the United States for you to make the right decision. Because your decision, I won't use the words you're stuck with, but as long as you're a member of someplace, unless you terminate that contract, all of your works are licensed by that particular organization and are paid by that particular organization.
One of the interesting aspects that you have to get used to when you're working inside of these commercial domains of music, when music becomes a commodity that someone's going to use to support or sell another product, it's different. It's treated differently than when you write something in your room and someone might even perform it or you might even play it. And even that, the moment you record something, your relationship with that music changes because now anyone can record it. You've lost control over who can play that music. Now you're compensated for that. There's a standard, way that you're going to make money when other people record your music, but you no longer, you have the right to the first shot at it, but after that, it's now entered the public's ear and you do not have the right to monopolize a piece of music. Well, it's even a little stricter, not stricter, but the reality is it's even a little different when you move into someone paying you to write a piece of music for a commercial or paying you to write up some music for a film. 98% of it is all done as what we call work for hire, which means they're going to pay you to write a piece of music, produce that recording, hand it over to them, and then they own it. It is their piece of music. It is their tape, it is their stuff. They expect you to have done all the right paperwork with the performers. They're going to want to see that paperwork. If it's a union, it's a large budget, it's usually a union budget, which means there's real forms and there's a real whole business protocol that has to be passed on. You're going to be asked to sign a contract that's going to read things that would frighten you to death, which basically is saying, this is not yours now, The good news is, if you do it well, what's really important in that world is your personal reputation. Do you deliver what you say? Do you do what you say? Do you do it well? Do they like hanging out with you? Are you someone they want to have lunch with? Because, frankly, most of those guys don't know a whole lot, self-admittedly, about music. And in some weird sense, they're proud of that fact. Well, I don't really know, but I know what I want. And the most frightening words to hear from anybody is, I don't know anything about music, but I'll know it when I hear it, because that can enter you into a whole cycle of rewrites. And even that, man, when you move up the old food chain, you can be very specific to protect yourself. You can be very specific about which you're paid up front, how many rewrites they can expect, but remember, it's a business. So if you've agreed to do it for this much time, and they need that much time, and you refuse, they remember that, that can be a problem later. So you've got to make your decisions on that. But the primary thing, it's generally I think the legal term is, right, work for hire, which means you will not own this anymore. And that holds true in feature films. I think, to my little bit of knowledge, probably someone like John Williams at that level is able to maintain some probably control of the concert rights to his film music. He probably has some ownership issues in there because of the level that he is. Because they know, i.e., Paramount or Sony, whoever, that the cat's going to go play it and there's going to be royalties generated and they want a piece of it, and if they don't give him some of it, he won't do it. He'll go write something else. So once you reach a certain level, all this is ultimately negotiable, but you got to be way up the food chain to start demanding much of anything from anybody. They're going to want your publishing, they're going to want your master tape, they're going to want the total rights to it. I've been able to successfully limit, I don't want to hear this piece of music in another ad campaign for a different product. I've been able to say, it is for this one, you've got it, it's yours, but if you want to use it in a whole different product campaign, there's a reuse fee. I usually negotiate that percentage up front so that they know what it's going to cost them. I've been lucky and been able to do a little bit of that with giving them carte blanche for a time frame, and if they want to use it further, it'll cost you this much. But by the time I was able to do that, not only I had been doing it a long time, but I had been doing it for those people a long time. And I don't believe they were naive when they signed the agreement. I believe they were being cool, because it was like, fine, make you some bread too.
If you do a deal with a publisher and the publisher says, okay, whenever your records are sold, we will collect the royalty that's derived from those record sales, which is called a mechanical royalty. So every time your record gets sold, it'll throw off 65 cents a record. Somebody's got to co-collect that. The publisher will say, we'll do that for you on your behalf because you, the artist, you need some leverage. These record labels are sometimes hard to get money out of. We can help you. For that fee, for that service, we're going to take a fee. That's basically called an administration fee, where they will go and collect the money. Typically, that can be 15-25% of what they collect. The publisher, or in this case, the administrator, keeps that percentage. Then the writer keeps the other 75 to 85%. When you do exploitation, when you do a kind of more inclusive publishing deal where the publisher is actually going out and trying to get your song used, and the publisher gets it used in a movie, frequently the splits are higher. The publisher will take sometimes up to 50%. So if you get $10,000 for a song to be used in a TV show, if $10,000 is the fee, the publisher will take $5,000 and then remit $5,000 to the writer of the song. Radio play, public performance, the money that's collected from ASCAP or BMI, that money goes directly to the writer. They bypass the publisher. There's a writer share and a publisher share. ASCAP sends right to the writer, unlike record labels who go to the publisher and then the publisher divides up. ASCAP and BMI pay the writer share directly to the writer. ASCAP and BMI don't take any of that. And then there's a publisher share, which typically the publisher will split with the writer. So the math is a little bit funky, but you as a writer typically end up with 75% of the performance money from ASCAP or BMI, and the publisher ends up with 25%. In point of fact, you end up with 150 out of 200%, but that's strange math. It's 75% of 100. Until you do a deal with a publisher, whatever that may be, you are the publisher. Right. So in that case, if you're getting radio play and you've not done a deal with the publisher, you will get both the writer share and the publisher share from ASCAP or BMI. You get 100% of the writer share, 100% of the publisher share. You're getting 200%. If $10,000 comes in, you get $10,000. You don't have to split it with anyone. If you can go collect your mechanicals from a record label, rather than giving an administrator 15-25%, 100% comes to you. The rub is again exploitation. It's hard to get those songs used in a movie. It's hard to get those songs used in an ad. Publishers, they're called creative publishers in the business because there's a difference between a publisher who will just administrate and one who will actually try and get songs used. And the ones that get songs used are frequently called creative publishers. Have relationships that are supposed to help do this.